Hey, families. I gotta say, it felt a little weird to summarize 1,000 years of human history in 3 chapters. So I wanted to make some sort of parting remarks about the medieval period. Um, the first one was that I laughed out loud. I read about how people would quote authorities and debate over how many teeth were in a horse's mouth. The horses were not uncommon during the medieval area, but apparently no one thought to just go to the nearest horse, open up its mouth, use their looky eyes, and count the teeth. It was sort of ridiculous. But you can kind of see how, and I am certainly no historian. My understanding is that during the medieval period, people were very interested in heaven and what authorities had to say about heaven, and not about this world and their own experiences in this world. And that didn't just mean that there were no additional observations. Um, as you can see from the second set of herbarium samples, um, it wasn't just that they didn't add knowledge, but like, what are you supposed to do with this image of a plant with snakes for roots? It wasn't just that there was no additional knowledge, it was that knowledge actually kind of reversed. They'd copy and they'd make copies of copies, and mistakes were kind of incorporated into these copies of copies, and in a way they knew less than they did before the medieval period, certainly about this world. You're gonna see that again and again in biology. You can't just stagnate. You're either growing, progressing, flourishing, or you're decaying. There's no such thing as stasis. So keep that in mind. And I bring this up in part to emphasize why I'm taking the approach that I am to this course. Um, it's not that other people's observations are useless or worse than useless, but it is important to be good at making your own first-hand observations. And if you're going to use the observations of others, they got to be good observations, right? And it's important that you can validate that they are good observations. And at the end of the day, almost all new knowledge starts with new observations. That's why I think it's so important that you have these materials, that you do your firsthand observations and your own experiments, um, so that you can add to the body of knowledge, so we can keep growing in knowledge and understanding of biology. And I don't just mean we, I mean you. So keep at it with your observations and your experimentations. I think you're going to find it really rewarding. And the second thing I want to say about the medieval period in general is that it really resonated with me when they talked about how physicians and herb gatherers were really looked down on, and how, if your profession is considered not respectable or worse, that you're very sus. Um, Probably not a lot of people are going to want to do that profession. And it's probably going to stymie any progress in that profession. And with that in mind, I want you to consider how we think of scientists today. Um, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, but if you think about how scientists are portrayed in film and television, for example, the thing that stands out to me is that they're almost universally portrayed as kind of crazy and at best amoral. Like they don't really care about being good or kind or helpful. Um, and a lot of times scientists are portrayed as downright evil and just really not caring about the human condition. Or if anything, wanting to engineer the human condition's destruction. And I gotta say, when I see that, it's really hurtful. It's like there are a lot of people in society who think very poorly of me without even really knowing what I do or why I do it. So, when you think about scientists, keep that in mind. Keep in mind kind of what you assume about them and maybe what other people assume about them. and ask yourself if that's fair. I mean, there are unscrupulous people in every profession. I don't deny that. But is it fair to condemn an entire profession as being unrespectable, like the herb gatherers were, or, you know, kind of charlatans like the physicians of the medieval era were, or just kind of crazy and evil as they sometimes are today? Ask yourself what that's going to mean for the future of science. All right. So I want to end on a positive note. So again, let's not take people's word for it. Let's do our own observations and our own experiments and see what we can come up with. All right. See you next time.